are right in the midst of learning about different ways that we can visualize qualitative data. And one way in which we can visualize or make information more visual for our reader or for our audience is to color certain phrases, words, paragraphs, or sentences. And so I've asked my good friend Ann Emery from Depict Data Studio to come on to this One Chart at a Time video series to talk more about this specific technique. I've seen Ann use this a lot in her own terrific work, and so I thought she would be the perfect person to talk about ways that you can visualize your qualitative data by coloring these different phrases or words. So I'm going to hand it over to Ann so you can learn more about this specific visualization type.
Hey there, it's Ann Emery, and let's talk about colored phrases in qualitative data visualization. Now, in case we don't know each other yet, I run Depict Data Studio, and my team and I provide a mix of data viz training and consulting. I've worked with a lot of organizations over the past 7 years of business, everyone from government agencies to universities to foundations to nonprofits. And I've known John even longer than that. I've known John for about 10 years now. So we have partnered on a number of topics from, him inviting me in to speak on his podcast about my experiences teaching data viz internationally. He's come into my courses to talk to my participants about table remakes and rules for better tables. So when he reached out and asked me to talk about this topic, I thought, of course, let's do this. Let's go for it. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about 3 things. I'm going to show you the first time that I used colored phrases, some of my favorite examples of colored phrases, and some really, really practical tips. Okay, so first, let's go back in time to 2013 and 2014 to Ann Emery's master's thesis before I knew better, way back in the dinosaur days of data viz. So I had worked on this national project researching how nonprofits used data, if at all. This was the dinosaur days for using data and organizational culture around data as well. So I had interviewed about 500 or so nonprofits, a mix of closed-ended and open-ended questions. And here was one of many of those questions. So I asked people, if your organization worked with an external evaluator, this particular type of consultant, what was your experience? Was it horrible, poor, mixed, good, excellent, etc.? And then depending on how they answered, they got a follow-up question. So if they said, we had a horrible experience, we asked them, why wasn't it positive? And if they had an excellent experience, we asked them, why do you think it was positive? And we had so much closed-ended and open-ended data to compare. So this is, one screenshot of many, many data vizzes that I made for this project. You can see some stacked column charts showing how many people said excellent, good, mixed, etc., with some sample quotes. But I really want to draw you to just this page and zoom in on this kind of color coding I was reading all of these hundreds of responses, and some were itty bitty and some were like essays of people's gripes about all of their bad experiences. And I started noticing some common themes show up. So I tried to show those themes with these colored boxes. And when I say colored boxes, I mean, this was literally me in Word going to insert, shape, and arranging boxes and lines and little text boxes on the screen. This was a huge win at the time because it helped me as the researcher behind the scenes sift through all that data and figure out what was even going on. And I remember my thesis committee was like, whoa, this is amazing. We've never seen this before. How'd you come up with this? And I was just like, I didn't know any other way to do it. This just seemed logical. And they were like, great, you passed. This is outstanding. So let me show you nowadays what this could look like with some even better examples. There are lots of great examples to pick from, but I picked my top 2 for you today. Okay, so this first one comes from the New York Times from back in 2016, the convention speeches from Trump and Clinton before the 2016 election. So what we've got is their actual transcripts of their convention speeches at the bird's eye view, right? And This is a great accordion method too for helping people see the overview of the data, like how long are the speeches, but then you can also zoom in and guide your reader towards specific details. Zoom out, zoom in, zoom out again, zoom in again, back and forth so people really understand the full context. And you can actually click on these images too to see the full transcript. Great, great, great accordion learning. It was amazing. Now they've also, for bonus points, as if this could get any more clear, I just love this. They've color-coded some key phrases too to help us notice big categories like what's wrong with the country or what's good about the country. And then you scroll down and here's even more of this accordion method too of 3 sample quotes of what was good or what was bad from each candidate. You scroll down more and they go into even more categories, showing us how both candidates talked about their promises, vision, and policy proposals, and so on. Really, really simple, really great way of not making us read the whole convention speech. Somebody or a team of people behind the scenes read those for us, and they've saved us some time by drawing our attention to key themes. Here's a second example that I really love. I love the data viz, not the topic, of course. It's from the Washington Post about the Ferguson case. And these are eyewitness statements of, did Michael Brown charge? What was going on in Ferguson? So let me zoom in a little bit. So if you want to quickly skim some of these phrases, but you get the idea of this grouping of eyewitness statements also by color. So you can see examples of Michael Brown charging, walking back, turning around, falling back, surrendering. And not only are they colored for certain categories, but there's also that kind of thumbs up, thumbs down stoplight coding with the green and orange. It's almost like, let me go back a second. It's almost like a stacked bar chart, like a stacked column chart showing us how many phrases are in each grouping as well. So again, really somber topic area, but really skimmable data viz. I love, love, love the fills behind these statements. Okay, so how might we apply this to our own projects? I want to show you some really practical tips for how you might make key phrases in your text stand out with color, but also with some other techniques. Okay, so let's pretend you've got all your data, your full paragraph or paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. You might have open-ended survey responses. You might have interview transcripts, you might have speech transcripts, whatever type of text-based, qualitative data you have. And let's compare and contrast all of these different techniques that we might try. Regular, bold, italics, underlines, and so on. So first up, regular, meh, big red X there, right? Who's got the time? What's the point? If somebody wanted to read the entire thing, they'd read the entire thing. But let's save our readers some time. So that brings us to option 2, bold. Bolding, it's so powerful. It's just bolding, but look how much these key phrases jump off the screen at us. It's so much more skimmable just with bolding. I love bolding. If you're pressed for time, if your reader's pressed for time, go for it. Bolding alone is going to be outstanding. Italics, meh, red X there. Not as strong as bolding, not as powerful. It just looks a little bit busy. Those key phrases don't really stand out, especially not compared to the bolding in the previous examples. So, red X for those. Underlining, meh, red X. Only use underlines for hyperlinks. This wasn't the case maybe 10 years ago, but now it is. People think that if it's underlined, they should be able to click on it and get more details. So if it's not a hyperlink, don't underline it. Color can work with some caveats. So this is my Depict Data Studio Blue. I recommend using brand colors, not random colors, not software default colors like Excel blue or Tableau blue, but brand colors for a little boost in professionalism. Depending on your brand color, this might be easier or harder. Like if you have a pastel yellow, don't even bother. Colored text is not going to work. If you have something like a royal blue, like I do, this could work, okay? But here are the caveats. You're going to have to take the rest of the text and push it to the background a little bit. So see how the rest of the text right now is black? I'm going to change it to dark gray right here. Slight change. And then I'm going to make the blue really stand out by bolding it. Okay, so you're going to have to make everything that's not important dark gray so it fades a little bit, and then pull those key phrases to the foreground with a colored bold text. I could talk about accessibility alone for days. That would be another lesson or many lessons on their own. But a good rule of thumb for accessibility is if it's colored text, it needs to be bold. Okay, outlines. I'm going to X these out because they were a nice try for my master's thesis years ago before I knew any better. But I think when you see the fills next, you're going to love the fills even more powerful. So outlines are out, but fills are so helpful with a couple caveats, of course. So you're going to have to make sure that your text is legible. Make sure there's enough contrast between your text and your fill color. Remember that rule of thumb I just told you about accessibility. If it's colored text or a colored background, it needs to be bold to make sure that it's legible and it's visible for all of us. For bonus points, the icing on the cake would be to color code your key phrases by topic, by tone, by sentiment, whatever, these different categories are. You might have like a thumbs up, thumbs down type of categorization. You might just have two different categories. So think about whether you need different categories and therefore different colors, and what tone you want those colors to have as well. If you really want to confuse people, you could apply all of these techniques at once. Don't do this. Let's show a little bit of restraint. We don't need, bold and italics and underlines and color and out. You can see it's overkill, right? So the simpler, the better, really. We're choosing between bold, colored text, and the fill seem to be the most strongest when I compare them all side by side. I hope this lesson was really helpful for you. I hope you liked seeing the first time that I used colored phrases and how, it mostly worked, but then also some leaders to look to for examples. The New York Times and their convention speech example, great example here. The Washington Post and their Ferguson example, showing the colors by different sentiments or tones as well. And I hope you really liked seeing all of these techniques for regular versus bold versus italic versus underline side by side to figure out which ones you think are most powerful. And again, I'm a big fan of bold or color or fill, but not all of these all at once. Totally unnecessary. Please stay in touch as you apply this to your own projects. You can get in touch with me at depictdatastudio.com or on social media. I'm at Ann Emery, and I'd love to see how you take these techniques and apply them to your data sets.
And thanks to Ann for that great review of coloring phrases in your qualitative data. Sometimes it takes a little bit more work to visualize qualitative data and highlight those important findings for your readers. But we've already talked about a few ways in which you can do so. In this case, by just adding color to some of your text. So come back tomorrow. We've got a couple more to talk about when it comes to visualizing your qualitative data. I'll see you then.